Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brother and sister, welcome back to Islamic Notes channel. Nourdeen Wildeman, Islam agrees with me. Nourdeen Wildeman did not start his interest in Islam with any search. He was not looking for God or the reason behind the greatness of the universe at that time, nor a purpose in life. I was just looking for a book, he said. The Dutch man received many questions after officially embracing Islam. In addition to questioning the response of his environment and family, most people ask the reason for his conversion to Islam. It's a surprising question, especially if it's asked by a Muslim, Nourdeen said. Nourdeen has always said that it was the truth of Islam that made him a Muslim. My conversion to Islam was not because I almost died after crashing my car into a tree, or because I had a magical moment where I saw a glimmer of light, he wrote in an article. It all started one day around 2003-2004 when Nourdeen came to a bookstore. The fan of philosophy and sociology books had not yet decided to buy any books when he found a green book. It said Islam, Values, Principles, and Reality on the cover of the book. Nourdeen held it and examined it. At that moment, he remembered some Muslims he knew. I never knew what they believed and believed in. Islam is everything in the news that affects relations at home and abroad. Nourdeen defined Islam in his mind at that time. Starting from that view, he made a small but important decision. I walked to the cashier and bought the book. I wanted to know everything about the religion that colored the news, said the man born on January 29, 1983. Until that moment, Nourdeen's brain had stored various negative associations about Islam. For example, he was surprised when a Muslim thought he was pious while he was abusive to his wife. He also questioned the reason Muslims worshiped the Cube building in Mecca and considered Muslims as an intolerant community. All those thoughts drove me to read about Islam, he said, and Nourdeen began to finish his first Islamic book. He then moved on to another book and devoured its contents, then started reading the third book, and so on. Nourdeen read quite a few books about Islam and began to be surprised by what she found. I found that almost everything I thought was part of Islam and everything I was against was the very thing that Islam was against. She found the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, who stated that the goodness of a person's faith can be seen from how he treats his wife. I began to understand that Muslims do not worship the Kaaba and even oppose the worship of statues and the like, and he said. Nourdeen began to feel amazed. Everything she read about Islam did not contradict her thoughts. Islam agrees with me. I don't need to convince myself about the commands or teachings of Islam because almost all of them are basic rules that I have agreed to long ago, she said. It's like I'm reading my own opinion. Once when the month of Ramadan arrived, he tried fasting. I bought a Quran and downloaded the Ramadan schedule, prayer and imsak time calendar from the internet. Nourdeen learned many things during Ramadan that year. Entering the last days of the month, Nourdeen went to a mosque to pay zakat. Giving money to a good cause is the right thing to do. So being a non-Muslim is not an excuse not to give, he said. Arriving at the mosque, he met a mosque treasurer who greeted him with a question. Are you a Muslim? Nourdeen shook his head, then continued. But I fasted for a whole month yesterday. The mosque treasurer advised him not to rush and to take as much time as he needed to learn about Islam. Nourdeen continued reading to learn about Islam until the next Ramadan arrived. As usual, at the end of Ramadan, she returned to the mosque to pay zakat. The man she had met before greeted her again and asked her the same question. Are you a Muslim now? Nourdeen shook her head. Didn't you tell me not to rush? She replied. Shaking her head slowly, the man said, Yes, but don't take it too lightly. Nourdeen tried to make that year her last year as a non-Muslim. She quit smoking and drinking alcohol. I encouraged myself and the people around me to do good and prevented myself and them from doing wrong. Ted Wachida Handasa. From a social network, Nourdeen met a Muslim woman who also came from the Netherlands. Once she knew Nourdeen had not converted to Islam, the woman suggested she visit and meet her husband, a Muslim born in Egypt. Nourdeen complied with the advice. Nourdeen and the man talked about many things. When he returned to visit on another occasion, the man taught Nourdeen how to pray properly. I tried my best and he watched my movements. Nourdeen took the Shahada 2 weeks later, on December 9, 2007, at a mosque not far from where the Muslim couple she met through social media lived. My path to Islam was through books, and I came to Islam through theory, she said. The choice of Islam, Nourdeen said, was a rational choice, not an emotional one. After officially converting to Islam, Nourdeen studied the Quran at Dar al-Ilmi in the Netherlands. He was soon known as an Islamic activist and Dawah activist. Last year, he launched a sustainable Dawah program based on mosque services in the land of windmills. Convert. Nourdeen Wildeman became Muslim before declaring his faith. Once, while going to Turkey for a vacation, Nourdeen had the opportunity to enter and look around several large mosques. It was then that he realized that with every step and time he had gone through, the feeling of God's presence in his life grew bigger and bigger. I began to see that what was before me were signs of the Creator, he said. Nourdeen started trying to pray occasionally. She continued to read a lot about Islam and started adding to her Islamic references from the internet. From a social network, Nourdeen met a Muslim woman who also came from the Netherlands. Once she knew Nourdeen had not converted to Islam, the woman suggested that she visit and meet her husband, an Egyptian-born Muslim. Nourdeen complied with the advice. She and the man talked about many things on their first visit. When she returned on another occasion, the man taught Nourdeen how to pray properly. I tried my best and he paid attention to my movements. Nourdeen declared his faith 2 weeks later on December 9, 2007, at a mosque not far from where the Muslim couple he met lived through social media. The imam, who converted me to Islam, read the Shahada sentence slowly, and I followed slowly. When he read the prayer for me, I was like someone who managed to catch his breath after being out of breath, he recalled. My path to Islam was through books, and I came to Islam through theory, Nourdeen said, asserting that he had made a rational, not an emotional choice. Islam for him was the answer to every question. One time after that, Nourdeen went to the mosque she had visited to pay her zakat. The same man greeted her again and asked her if she had become a Muslim. Nourdeen nodded this time. Yes, sir, and my name is Nourdeen now. After officially converting to Islam, Nourdeen studied the Quran at Dar al-Ilmi in the Netherlands. He quickly became known as an Islamic activist and Dawah activist. Last year, he launched a sustainable Dawah program based on mosque services in his country. The story of Dutch convert Nourdeen Wildeman, my way through books. I don't usually do this. That is, I don't usually take the time to tell anyone how I converted to Islam, or should I say, how I returned to Islam. See, when people find out you've become a Muslim, you always get the same questions over and over again. How did your parents react? Are you in love with a Muslim woman? Are you accepted into the Islamic community as a convert? But most importantly, people ask me, why did you convert to Islam? I was surprised that even Muslims asked why I converted to Islam. Remember, this is the true religion, is my usual go-to answer. I didn't crash my car into a tree and almost die. I didn't see the light. I don't even know exactly when I became a Muslim. Some people were surprised, but I wasn't even looking for God. I don't look for excuses in life. I'm not looking for a purpose. Actually, I was just looking for a book. I walked into a bookstore without any idea what I was going to buy. This was somewhere around 2003 or 2004. I love reading, with a particular interest in books sold in the store, among recent history, philosophy, and sociology. That's where the green book caught my attention. It was called Islam, Values, Principles, and Reality. I held it in my hand, looked at it, and realized that I knew some Muslims, but had no idea what they believed. Meanwhile, Islam was spreading everywhere and seemed to influence internal and external affairs. I decided to buy the book and see what this religion was all about. I walked up to the counter and bought the book, completely unaware of the 4.5-year journey I had just embarked on, which would lead directly to the Shahada. Before I started reading about Islam, I already had some negative associations with the religion. For example, I wondered how a devout Muslim could think he was a pious person while at the same time abusing his own wife. Or, for example, I wonder why Muslims worship cubic stones in Mecca, while statues or buildings have no power and cannot help anyone. I couldn't understand why Muslims were so intolerant of other religions other than just saying that everyone believes in the same God. With this in mind, I started reading. After the first book, the second book. After the second came the third, and so on. And after a few years, I had finally read quite a few books on Islam and was very surprised. I discovered that almost everything I thought was part of Islam and that I was against was actually against Islam. It turns out that the Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, had said that one can see how good a believer is by the way he treats his wife. I discovered that Muslims do not worship the Kaaba. They are more against the worship of idols or the like. I find that Islamic civilization throughout its history, except perhaps in the last centuries, is the best example of religious tolerance on earth. I didn't need to be convinced about most of the things Islam tells us to do or how to behave, because I found many of the basic rules that I had already agreed to before learning about Islam. I read my own opinions on many things, but the books kept saying, "This is Islam." There wasn't much dawah going on around me at that time. Well, not proactive anyway. The help I got was what I asked for when talking to people around me. This doesn't explain everything about how dawah is organized in the Netherlands. I just didn't have people around me who were very involved in this. So when Ramadan came, I decided to give it a try since no book could tell me what fasting really feels like. I went to my Muslim coworkers and told them that I would fast with them. I bought a Quran and found a 30-day schedule, imshak and iftar, on the internet. When I told others about reading the complete Quran and fasting in Shawwal, the lunar month after Ramadan, some of them never heard or did it themselves. I brought milk and dates to work and explained to them how the sunnah should be followed. I told them that if they did not read their daily 1/30th of the Quran, I would have no one to ask my questions to. So we went together as a group. Their mothers or wives cooked the food we ate at work, so I tried new foods too. I learned a lot that Ramadan, and so did everyone else, and we had a great time. My first Eid turned out to be a funeral, but the rest of it was a great month. After Ramadan, I went to the mosque to pay my zakat. I thought that giving money to a good cause was the right thing to do, so not being a Muslim was no reason for me not to pay it. This is where I first met the treasurer of the mosque in my hometown. He asked me if I was a Muslim. "No, sir, I am not a Muslim," was my reply, "but I fast during the month of Ramadan." He told me to take it easy, take my time, and never rush. Months passed. I continued to read books about Islam. Most of the books I read were from non-Muslims, such as Karen Armstrong. I also took the time to read what people who were negative about Islam were saying. I read about religiously motivated terrorism, about the clash of civilizations and so on. However, I found that for every question I asked, Islam had a convincing answer. This does not necessarily mean that the Muslims I spoke to had convincing answers, but most of the information I gathered about Islam came from these books. At the end of the next Ramadan, I went back to the mosque to pay my zakat. I met the treasurer again, and he recognized me. He asked me once again if I was a Muslim. "No, sir, I am not a Muslim," was my reply, "but you told me to calm down, didn't you?" He calmly shook his head and said, "Yes, take it easy, but don't take it too easy. Now I am starting my last year as a non-Muslim. I have stopped drinking alcohol. I have stopped smoking. I try to encourage myself and others to do good, try to prevent myself and others from doing wrong. I went to Turkey for a vacation and looked inside some of the big mosques. With every step I took, with every day that passed, I could feel God's presence in my life growing. I went out into nature, and for the first time I could see that what was in front of me were signs of the Creator. Sometimes I tried to pray. This was something I had never done on my own, which certainly did not look like the way I pray today. I kept reading and reading, but now I also started getting information about Islam from the internet. On Hives, a popular Dutch social networking site, I was approached by a Dutch Muslim. She asked if I was a Muslim, and I told her that I was not. She asked me to come to her house and meet her husband. He is a Muslim by birth, practicing, and was born in Egypt. He and I had dinner together and then talked about Islam all night. The second time I was there, he showed me the proper way to pray at my request. I tried to do it as best I could, and he watched me try. When we took a short break, he asked me that question. So, do you think you're ready to do this? Yeah, I think I'm ready. I realized that I had become a Muslim. I had not yet taken the Shahada, so it was not official, but somewhere in the years before I had become a Muslim. I came to believe that there is no God to be worshipped except the one true God, the Creator. I came to believe that Muhammad ﷺ is his messenger, the last messenger who has a part in perfecting the religion. I want to fast. I want to pay zakat. I want to perform the prayer. I still dream of the Hajj every day. My path was through books, through theories. It was a rational choice, not an emotional choice. I looked at the information that was out there, compared and pondered. Islam was the answer to every question. I knew that if I didn't start calling myself a Muslim, I would be a hypocrite. A week or two later, he and I went to the mosque in his hometown. He had already spoken to the imam, so they all knew I was coming. My father came with a camera. The imam said the creed, little by little. I repeated, little by little. As the imam recited the prayer, my Egyptian brother translated it into Dutch for me. I felt like I had run for miles and was now at the finish line. I mean, literally, I was out of breath as if I had just sprinted. I slowly regained my breath, feeling calm and happy. Suddenly, I realized finally I had become Nourdeen. I went to the mosque in my hometown. As I entered the building, I met the treasurer. He asked me once again if I was a Muslim. Yes, sir, and my name is Nourdeen, I said with a smile. Alhamdulillah, he replied, quickly adding, finally,